The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the county courthouse, casting long rectangles of light across the freshly polished floor. Maya Johnson moved her mop with the same precision she once used to clear buildings in hostile territory. At 52, her body still held the lean strength of someone who had lived a disciplined life, though few who passed her in these hallowed halls would guess the truth about the quiet woman in the gray uniform. 3 years had passed since Maya traded her military fatigues for the janitor's uniform. 3 years of early mornings and late evenings, of nodding politely to judges and lawyers who barely noticed her presence. And that was exactly how she wanted it. "Morning, Maya," called out Rita from the clerk's office, one of the few who bothered to learn her name. "You're here early again." Maya smiled, the expression warming her serious face. "Floor doesn't clean itself," she replied, her voice carrying a gentle depth that sometimes surprised people. The truth was, Maya enjoyed the quiet of the early morning courthouse. Before the chaos of the day began, before the parade of human drama filled these rooms, she found peace in the simple act of making things clean and orderly. What nobody in the building knew, what Maya had carefully kept to herself, was that for 25 years before taking this job, she had served as one of the most elite soldiers in the United States military. Captain Maya Johnson, Delta Force, the classified missions, the medals locked away in a box under her bed, the nightmares that sometimes still woke her, all of it belonged to another life now. "You missed a spot," joked Hector, the security guard, as he passed through the metal detector for his morning shift. Maya flashed him a quick grin. "Nothing gets past you, does it?" Their morning banter had become a comfortable routine. Hector was one of the good ones, treating her with the same respect he showed to the judges. Maya appreciated that more than he knew. As she worked her way toward the east wing of the building, Maya mentally reviewed the day's cleaning schedule. Courtroom 3 needed extra attention today. Judge Martinez had a high-profile case starting, something about political corruption that had been all over the local news. The judge was fair but demanding, known for running a tight ship. Maya respected that. "Need any help with those trash bins?" asked Thomas, the elderly maintenance man who had shown Maya the ropes when she first started. His arthritis was getting worse, though he tried to hide it. "I've got it," Maya assured him. "Why don't you check the heating in courtroom 2? Judge Baker was complaining about the cold yesterday. Thomas nodded gratefully. That was another thing about Maya that her coworkers had come to appreciate. She was always aware of others, always finding ways to help without making a big show of it. They didn't know this came from years of leading teams through life or death situations, where awareness of your people could mean the difference between mission success and failure. Maya wheeled her cleaning cart into the marble-floored lobby, pausing to wipe down the directory board. The courthouse was starting to wake up now. A few lawyers hurried through the front doors, briefcases in hand, already checking their phones. 2 police officers chatted by the security checkpoint, coffee cups steaming in the air-conditioned chill. The weight of her past pressed on Maya as she watched one of the officers laugh at something his partner said. How many times had she worked alongside law enforcement during her career? The memories sometimes ambushed her like this. Flashbacks to operations in dusty villages and crowded cities, to the weight of responsibility for her team members' lives. She shook her head slightly, focusing on the task at hand. The present was what mattered now. This job, simple as it was, gave her structure, purpose. After the intensity of her military career, the ordinary rhythms of civilian life had been harder to adjust to than she'd expected. "Excuse me," said a woman's voice, breaking into Maya's thoughts. She turned to see a young attorney she recognized from the public defender's office. "Do you know if courtroom 4 is open yet? I have a client meeting." "They're still setting up," Maya replied. "Should be ready in about 15 minutes. There's a bench around the corner if you want to wait." "Thanks," the lawyer said, already looking back at her phone as she walked away. Most people looked past Maya in her janitor's uniform. It didn't bother her. In fact, there was a strange comfort in the invisibility. During her years in Delta Force, she had learned to blend into surroundings, to observe without being observed. Those skills served her well in the second life she had built for herself. Maya finished with the lobby and moved toward the courthouse offices. The administrative staff was arriving now, bringing with them the buzz of conversation and the smell of coffee from the small break room. Brenda, the head clerk, waved Maya over. "Hey, could you take a look at the sink in the break room? It's making that noise again," she asked. Sure thing, Maya replied. Small repairs had become part of her unofficial duties. She had always been good with her hands, able to fix almost anything mechanical. Another leftover skill from her previous life, where adaptability could save lives. In the break room, Maya found the problem quickly. A loose connection under the sink. As she tightened it with the small toolkit she kept on her cart, she overheard two clerks talking about the new security officer who had started last week. He's got an attitude problem, one woman whispered. Did you see how he spoke to Mrs. Wilkins yesterday? Just because she forgot her ID badge. I heard he had complaints at his last precinct, the other replied. Something about excessive force. Maya kept her expression neutral, but her ears perked up. Her instinct for trouble had never quite faded. In her experience, people who abused small amounts of power were always worth watching carefully. The morning continued with its usual rhythm. Maya mopped the floors in the family court waiting area, where anxious parents already sat clutching folders of documents. She emptied trash bins in the offices, wiped down bathroom counters, and replaced paper towels. Simple, necessary tasks that brought order to the building. Few people would guess that those same hands had once assembled weapons in complete darkness, had treated battlefield wounds, had carried fallen comrades. The contrast wasn't lost on Maya. Sometimes she wondered what her old team would think of her now, pushing a cleaning cart through a county courthouse. But the truth was, after the intensity of her former life, there was something healing in these mundane tasks. Each clean floor, each emptied trash bin, they were small victories in a battle against chaos that didn't cost lives. Around 10 o'clock, Maya made her way to courtroom 3 to prepare it for Judge Martinez's case. The room was empty for the moment, sunlight streaming through tall windows onto the polished wooden benches. Maya always felt a certain reverence in the empty courtrooms. For all the flaws in the justice system, and she had seen plenty, there was something profound about these spaces dedicated to the ideal of fairness. As she carefully dusted the judge's bench, Maya's thoughts drifted to her last mission. The extraction had gone wrong. 2 team members lost, civilians caught in the crossfire. She had completed the objective, she always completed the objective, but the cost had been too high. After 25 years, that mission had finally convinced her it was time to step away. The nightmares had mostly faded now, reduced to occasional visits on stormy nights. The transition to civilian life had been rocky at first. The lack of clear mission parameters, the absence of the brotherhood that had defined her adult life. She had drifted for a while, trying various jobs before finding an unexpected peace in this position at the courthouse. "Is the courtroom ready?" asked a sharp voice from the doorway. Maya turned to see Judge Martinez's clerk, a nervous young man named Paul who always seemed to be running late despite his best efforts. "Almost done," Maya replied. "Just finishing up the judge's area." Paul nodded gratefully. "Thanks, Maya. It's going to be a circus in here today. The press is already setting up outside." Maya understood. High-profile cases brought extra stress for everyone in the building. As Paul hurried away to prepare the case files, she took one final look around the courtroom, making sure everything was in its place. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from her neighbor checking if Maya could feed her cat while she was away for the weekend. These small connections to the community around her had been as important to her recovery as the job itself. The quiet apartment building where most people knew each other by name. The community garden where she volunteered on weekends. The veterans support group that had helped her find her footing in civilian life. Maya texted back a quick yes before returning her phone to her pocket and wheeling her cart toward the door. Tomorrow would be another day of invisible service in these halls of justice, another day of the quiet life she had built for herself, far from the danger and intensity of her past. What she didn't know was that her 2 worlds were about to collide in ways she could never have anticipated. Tuesday mornings at the courthouse were usually quiet. Most trials started later in the week, and the building had a calm that Maya appreciated as she went about her cleaning routine. But this Tuesday felt different from the moment she walked through the security checkpoint at 5:30 a.m. "Morning, Maya," said Hector, stifling a yawn as he checked her ID badge. "Better watch yourself today. Officer Walters is on duty and he's already snapping at everyone." Maya nodded her thanks for the warning. In her 3 years at the courthouse, she had learned to spot trouble before it happened. Officer Derek Walters had joined the courthouse security team just 2 weeks ago. and rumors about him had spread quickly among the cleaning staff and clerks. Apparently, he'd been transferred from another precinct after incidents that nobody would discuss openly. "I'll stay out of his way," Maya promised, wheeling her cleaning cart toward the east wing. The courthouse was barely stirring as Maya started her morning tasks. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as she mopped the gleaming tile floors of the main hallway. Years in the military had trained her to be efficient and thorough, completing her work with a precision that her supervisors had come to rely on. Maya had just finished the public restrooms when she heard angry voices echoing down the corridor. Peering around the corner, she saw Officer Walters dressing down a young public defender who had apparently forgotten his ID badge in his car. "Rules are rules," Walters was saying, his voice unnecessarily loud for the early hour. "No exceptions, not even for hotshot lawyers who think they're special." The lawyer, looking flustered, was trying to explain that he had an emergency hearing in 10 minutes. Maya recognized him, a new hire who often worked late preparing cases for people who couldn't afford representation. He was one of the good ones. Walters was clearly enjoying the power trip, making no move to let the young lawyer pass even after another security officer had vouched for him. Maya frowned. This kind of behavior reminded her of certain officers she'd encountered during her military career, men who confused authority with bullying. As she watched, Judge Martinez appeared at the far end of the hallway, her black robes flowing behind her as she walked briskly toward her courtroom. The judge paused, taking in the scene with narrowed eyes, then approached. "Is there a problem here, Officer Walters?" she asked, her voice carrying the quiet authority that had made her respected throughout the courthouse. Walters straightened immediately. "No problem, Your Honor. Just enforcing security protocols." The judge looked at the young lawyer. "Mr. Chen, I believe you have a case in my courtroom this morning?" "Yes, Your Honor, but I left my—" "I can verify his identity," Judge Martinez said firmly to Walters. "Let him through. We can't keep justice waiting over a forgotten badge." The officer's face tightened, but he stepped aside. As the lawyer hurried past with a grateful nod to the judge, Maya could see the muscle in Walters' jaw twitching. Judge Martinez gave him a long, measuring look before continuing to her courtroom. Maya returned to her work, moving her cleaning cart toward courtroom 3, where a high-profile case was scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. The hallway outside was already filling with reporters and spectators, and she carefully navigated around them, becoming once again invisible in her gray uniform. By 8:30, the courthouse was fully awake. Lawyers rushed through corridors with armloads of documents, witnesses sat nervously on benches, and family members of defendants spoke in hushed voices. Maya had finished most of her morning tasks and was focusing on last-minute touch-ups before the day's proceedings began in earnest. She had just started cleaning the water fountains outside courtroom 3 when she heard heavy footsteps approaching. Officer Walters strode down the hallway, his shoes gleaming with a fresh polish that seemed out of place with his rumpled uniform. His face still showed signs of the morning's confrontation, a scowl etched into his features. Maya kept her head down, focusing on her task. Years of experience had taught her that the best way to deal with aggressive personalities was to avoid engaging when possible. In Delta Force, she had led teams through hostile territory using this same principle. Don't invite unnecessary conflict. But Walter seemed to be looking for trouble. He stopped a few feet from Maya, watching as she wiped down the drinking fountain. "You missed a spot," he said, his tone making it clear that this wasn't helpful feedback. Maya nodded without looking up. "Thank you, sir. I'll get it." She could sense him hovering, waiting for more of a reaction. When none came, he snorted dismissively and started to walk away. That should have been the end of it. Just another small, unpleasant interaction in a day full of people too busy or too important to notice the woman keeping their workplace clean. But as Maya turned to move her cleaning cart, one of the wheels caught on an uneven tile. The cart tilted, sending a spray bottle of cleaner sliding toward the edge. Maya lunged to catch it before it fell, accidentally bumping her cart forward as she did. The front of the cart gently tapped the back of Officer Walters' leg, barely enough contact to notice. But Walters spun around as if he'd been struck. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his voice echoing in the hallway. Maya straightened up, bottle in hand. "I'm sorry, sir." The cart slipped, It was an accident. People in the hallway were turning to look now. Maya could feel the weight of their stares, the sudden, unwanted attention making the back of her neck prickle with awareness. She had spent years blending into backgrounds, observing without being observed. Now she was the center of attention, and every instinct told her this situation was escalating unnecessarily. An accident? Walters repeated, taking a step toward her. Or maybe you people just don't know how to watch where you're going. The phrase "you people" hung in the air between them, its meaning unmistakable. Maya felt a cold tightness in her chest but kept her expression neutral. She had faced down warlords and terrorists. This angry man with a badge was nothing in comparison. Still, years of discipline kept her response measured. "It won't happen again, officer," she said calmly, moving to position her cart against the wall, out of the way. But Walters wasn't finished. "Look at my shoes," he said, pointing down at his polished black footwear where a small scuff was now visible. "Do you know how long it took me to shine these this morning?" Maya recognized the signs of someone looking for a fight, someone who needed to assert dominance regardless of the situation. In another life, she might have assessed him as a security risk, a potential compromise to a mission. Here, she just wanted to defuse the situation and get back to work. "I apologize about your shoes, sir," she said, her voice steady. "If you'd like, I can—" "You think an apology fixes this?" Walters cut her off, his voice rising. "First, the judge undermines my authority, and now the cleaning lady thinks she can push me around." The hallway had grown quieter, conversations dying away as more people turned to watch. From the corner of her eye, Maya could see a court clerk slipping away, presumably to find someone who could intervene. Good. Maya didn't want trouble. She had built a peaceful life here, leaving behind the violence and conflict of her military career. Just then, the doors to courtroom 3 opened and Judge Martinez stepped into the hallway. She took in the scene with a quick glance. Officer Walters standing aggressively close to Maya, the small crowd of onlookers, the tension in the air. "What's going on out here?" the judge asked, her authoritative voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. Before Maya could respond, Walters turned to the judge. "This janitor rammed her cart into me on purpose, Your Honor. Damaged my uniform." Judge Martinez looked skeptical. "Is that what happened, Ms. Johnson?" Maya shook her head slightly. "It was an accident, Your Honor. My cart slipped, and I apologized to Officer Walters." The judge nodded, clearly ready to move on. "Well, accidents happen. I think—" "With all due respect, Your Honor," Walters interrupted, his tone suggesting no respect at all. "I'm not letting this slide. People need to learn there are consequences when they disrespect an officer." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes, and Maya recognized it immediately, the look of someone about to make a very bad decision. She had seen it in the field, right before situations exploded into violence. Her muscles tensed instinctively, years of training preparing her body for what her mind already knew was coming. In one fluid motion, Walters stepped forward and shoved Maya backward, following through with a kick that connected with her shin. It wasn't a serious attack, more humiliation than harm, but it was enough to knock her off balance. Maya could have stayed standing. Her training had prepared her for far worse. But something told her to let herself fall, to let this play out without revealing who she really was. She hit the floor with a controlled fall that looked worse than it was, her body automatically distributing the impact in ways a civilian wouldn't know how to do. The hallway erupted in shocked gasps. Judge Martinez's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. "Officer Walters, stand down immediately!" But Walters was too far gone in his moment of perceived power. He looked down at Maya, his face twisted with an ugly smile. "Next time, watch where you're going," he said, punctuating his words with a racial slur that echoed in the suddenly silent hallway. Maya looked up at him from the floor, her mind calculating distances, angles, vulnerabilities, an automatic assessment she'd never quite unlearned. She could incapacitate him in at least 12 different ways without leaving her position on the floor, but that wasn't who she was anymore. That wasn't the life she had chosen. "Officer Walters," Judge Martinez's voice was ice cold now. "Step away from her this instant." Walters didn't move. Instead, his hand drifted to his taser, a threatening gesture that sent a ripple of fear through the onlookers. "I'm just making sure she doesn't try anything else, Your Honor." In that moment, as his fingers brushed the taser's handle, Maya knew the situation had crossed a line. No one in this hallway understood the danger they were in from a man who had just shown he was willing to abuse his authority physically. No one except her, and no one, especially not Officer Walters, had any idea who they were really dealing with. Time seemed to slow down in the courthouse hallway. Maya could feel the polished floor beneath her palms, cold and unyielding. She was aware of every sound, the shocked murmurs of the onlookers, Judge Martinez's sharp commands, the heavy breathing of Officer Walters as he stood over her, hand still resting on his taser. 25 years of military training had taught Maya to assess situations in fractions of seconds. Threat level, moderate to high. Civilians present, numerous. Potential collateral damage, significant. Available options, limited. Officer Walters took a step closer, his thumb flicking the safety strap off his taser holster. "I said stay down," he growled, seemingly deaf to the judge's orders. Judge Martinez moved forward, her black robe swirling around her ankles. "Officer Walters, I am ordering you to stand down and step away from Ms. Johnson immediately." But Maya could see that Walters was beyond hearing reason. His face had taken on the flushed, tight look of someone who had committed to a course of action and wouldn't back down. She'd seen that look before, in far-off countries where the rules of engagement were different. Here in the hallway of an American courthouse, it was more dangerous because it was so unexpected. As Walters began to pull the taser from its holster, Maya made her decision. She had spent 3 years building a quiet life, hiding who she really was and what she was capable of. But she wouldn't let this man harm her or potentially others just to keep her secret. What happened next occurred so quickly that most onlookers would later struggle to describe it. Maya's right hand shot out, not toward Walters but toward her cleaning cart. In one fluid motion, she grabbed the handle of her mop and swept it in a low arc that caught Walters behind his ankles. Simultaneously, she rolled to her left, creating distance between them. The officer, caught completely off guard, staggered backward. His hand fumbled with the half-drawn taser, which clattered to the floor as he fought to regain his balance. Maya was on her feet before the taser hit the ground, moving with a speed and grace that seemed impossible for a woman her age. To the observers, it might have looked like she simply got up quickly. Only someone with specialized training would recognize the perfectly executed kip-up that brought her from flat on her back to standing in under a second. Walters regained his balance and lunged for her, rage having completely overtaken his judgment now. "You're going to regret that," he snarled. But Maya wasn't where he expected her to be. With a subtle shift of weight, she sidestepped his charge. As his momentum carried him forward, she placed 2 fingers on a pressure point at his wrist and applied precisely the right amount of force. The officer's hand opened involuntarily, releasing the taser. At the same time, Maya's other hand, gently, far more gently than Walters deserved, guided him into a position that looked to observers like he had simply stumbled and stopped himself against the wall. Only Walters knew that he was effectively immobilized, a sensation of pins and needles spreading through his arm as Maya applied pressure to nerves and tendons that most people didn't even know existed. "Please stop, sir," Maya said quietly, her voice carrying no hint of strain despite holding a man twice her size in a secret submission hold. "I don't want any trouble." The entire sequence had taken less than 5 seconds, and Maya had made it look like nothing more than a lucky defensive move by a frightened janitor. Only Judge Martinez, watching with narrowed eyes, seemed to notice that something extraordinary had just happened. "Security," the judge called sharply, and 2 other officers who had been down the hall came running. "Remove Officer Walters from this courthouse immediately and confiscate his weapon." Maya released her hold on Walters so subtly that no one could tell she'd been controlling him at all. He stumbled forward, rubbing his wrist and looking confused, as if he couldn't quite understand what had just happened. "This woman assaulted me," he protested as the other officers approached cautiously. "We all saw what happened," Judge Martinez said, her voice cold with fury. "You physically attacked a courthouse employee who posed no threat to you whatsoever. You're lucky if assault charges are all you face, officer." The 2 security officers, both veterans who had worked at the courthouse for years, exchanged glances. They had heard about Walters' reputation and had been watching him carefully since his transfer. "Come on, Walters," the older officer said, taking him firmly by the arm. "Let's go have a chat with the chief." As they led the still protesting Walters away, the crowd in the hallway began to disperse, their excited whispers filling the air. Several people stopped to ask Maya if she was okay. their faces showing genuine concern. "I'm fine," she assured them, brushing dust from her uniform, just a little shaken up. But the truth was Maya wasn't shaken at all. The brief confrontation had triggered muscle memories and instincts that had lain dormant for 3 years. Her heart rate had barely increased, her breathing remained steady. The captain in her had assessed the threat and neutralized it with minimal force, just as she had been trained to do. Judge Martinez approached as the last of the onlookers drifted away. "Are you really all right, Ms. Johnson?" she asked, her eyes sharp and assessing. Maya nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Nothing I can't handle." The judge studied her face for a long moment. That was quite a move with the mop. Very effective. There was something in the judge's tone that made Maya glance up quickly. Did she suspect something? Had Maya revealed too much of her training in those brief seconds of action? "Lucky, I guess," Maya said with a small shrug. "I fell the right way." Judge Martinez's expression remained thoughtful. "Lucky indeed, though in my experience luck tends to favor the prepared." She paused, then added, "I'd like you to come to my chambers later to give a statement about what happened. We'll need it for the disciplinary proceedings." "Of course, Your Honor." As the judge turned to go back into her courtroom, she stopped and looked back over her shoulder. "You know, Ms. Johnson, you remind me of someone I met years ago during my time as a JAG officer." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. Iggy, Judge Advocate General's Corps, military lawyers. Had their paths crossed during her service? "I'm just a janitor, Your Honor," she said quietly. The judge's smile was small but knowing. "Of course. My mistake." She glanced at her watch. "I have court in 5 minutes. Would you mind straightening up the water station in my courtroom?" "Right away," Maya replied, grateful for the change of subject. As Judge Martinez disappeared back into courtroom 3, Maya took a deep breath and began gathering her cleaning supplies. The encounter with Walters had left her feeling oddly energized, as if parts of herself that had been sleeping had suddenly awakened. She wheeled her cart into the courtroom, aware of the curious glances from the lawyers and clerks who had heard about the incident in the hallway. News traveled fast in courthouses. By lunchtime, everyone would know that the quiet janitor had somehow taken down an aggressive security officer twice her size. As Maya refilled the water pitchers on the judge's bench, she noticed her hands were perfectly steady. No trembling, no delayed stress reaction, just the calm precision that had kept her alive through countless missions. She had spent 3 years carefully constructing this new identity, Maya Johnson, courthouse janitor. Simple, unassuming, invisible. A woman who mopped floors and cleaned bathrooms and went home to a small apartment, where she tended to houseplants and read mystery novels. Had she just blown her cover with that instinctive reaction to Walter's aggression? Would people start to wonder who she really was? Would they start asking questions about her past? Maya was still pondering these questions when the bailiff called the court to order and Judge Martinez swept in, commanding the room with her presence. The morning's case began, something about embezzled funds and corporate fraud, but Maya was only half listening as she finished her tasks and prepared to leave the courtroom. As she wheeled her cart toward the door, Judge Martinez caught her eye from the bench and gave her a small nod. There was something in that look, a recognition, an acknowledgement that made Maya pause. Did the judge know more than she was letting on? In the hallway, Maya found Hector waiting for her, concern etched on his friendly face. "I just heard what happened with Walters," he said. "Are you okay? Do you need to go home?" "I'm fine," Maya assured him with a smile. "Really, it wasn't as bad as people are making it sound." Hector shook his head. "They're saying you knocked him off his feet with your mop and then did some kind of martial arts move on him." Maya laughed, making sure it sounded genuine. "Do I look like a ninja to you, Hector? The man tripped over his own feet after he kicked me. I just got lucky and managed to get up before he could do anything else." Her friend didn't look entirely convinced, but he nodded slowly. "Well, I'm glad you're okay. That guy's had it coming since the day he transferred here. Always throwing his weight around, talking down to people." "Some people are just like that," Maya said, thinking of others she had encountered throughout her career. Bullies who use their authority to intimidate rather than protect. As she continued her rounds through the courthouse, Maya noticed people looking at her differently. Some nodded in approval, others smiled as if sharing a secret. Word had gotten around and the story was already growing in the telling. By afternoon, according to the whispers she overheard in the break room, she had disarmed Walters using only a pencil and had him pinned to the floor until security arrived. Maya sighed inwardly. So much for keeping a low profile. During her lunch break, she sat alone in a corner of the courthouse cafeteria, turning over the morning's events in her mind. She had spent decades in the shadows, carrying out missions that would never make the history books, protecting her country without recognition or fame. After retiring, all she had wanted was peace and anonymity, but perhaps a part of her had been sleeping these past 3 years, the part that stood up to bullies, that protected others, that refused to look away from injustice. Maybe that part of her needed to wake up again, even if it complicated her carefully constructed new life. As Maya returned to work, she noticed a group of clerks whispering and looking her way. One young woman, a new hire in the records department, approached hesitantly. "Ms. Johnson?" she said. "I just wanted to say thank you for what you did this morning. Officer Walters has been making comments to me every day when I come through security. No one else ever stood up to him." Maya smiled gently at the young woman. Sometimes people like that need to be reminded that their badge doesn't make them better than anyone else. The clerk nodded eagerly. "They're saying he's been suspended pending an investigation, and it's all because of you." As the young woman hurried back to her friends, Maya felt a strange mix of emotions: pride that she had stood up to a bully, concern about the attention she was receiving, and underneath it all, a quiet certainty that her two worlds, the elite soldier she had been and the janitor she had become, were about to collide in ways she couldn't predict. At 3:30, as scheduled, Maya made her way to Judge Martinez's chambers to give her statement about the incident with Officer Walters. As she knocked on the heavy wooden door, she had no idea that what waited inside would change everything. Maya knocked on the heavy wooden door of Judge Martinez's chambers, smoothing down her gray uniform with her free hand. After a moment, the judge's voice called for her to enter. The judge's chambers were elegant but not ostentatious. Oak bookshelves lined with legal texts. A large desk positioned beneath a window that offered a view of the city park across the street. Judge Martinez sat behind the desk, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed a document. She looked up as Maya entered, gesturing to a chair across from her. "Please sit down, Ms. Johnson," she said, removing her glasses and setting them aside. "How are you feeling after this morning's incident?" Maya sat, keeping her back straight and her hands relaxed in her lap, a posture that betrayed nothing of her military background but still maintained a natural alertness. "I'm fine, Your Honor, thank you for asking." The judge studied her for a long moment. "You know, most people would be quite shaken after being physically assaulted in their workplace." Maya met her gaze steadily. "I've always been good at staying calm in difficult situations." "Yes," Judge Martinez said thoughtfully. "I noticed that." She opened a drawer and pulled out a form. "This is a standard incident report. We need your account of what happened for the official record and for the disciplinary proceedings against Officer Walters." As Maya began to describe the morning's events, she was careful to downplay her response to Walters' aggression, making it sound like luck and instinct rather than years of specialized training. "So he kicked you, causing you to fall," the judge summarized. "And then when he reached for his taser, you used your mop to defend yourself?" "That's correct, Your Honor." Judge Martinez made a note on the form, then set down her pen. "Ms. Johnson, I'm going to be direct with you. What I witnessed in that hallway was not the random flailing of a frightened janitor. Those were controlled defensive techniques executed with precision." Maya kept her expression neutral. "I took a self-defense class at the community center last year. I guess some of it stuck." The judge's lips curved in a small smile. "A self-defense class at the community center doesn't teach joint manipulation techniques or how to execute a perfect recovery from a prone position." A cold feeling settled in Maya's stomach. She had revealed too much in those few seconds of action, but she wasn't ready to give up her carefully constructed anonymity just yet. "I'm not sure what you mean, Your Honor," she said calmly. Judge Martinez leaned back in her chair. "Before I became a civilian judge, I served for 12 years in the Judge Advocate General's Corps. I presided over courts-martial and reviewed operations involving special forces. I've seen those techniques before, Ms. Johnson. Or should I say Captain Johnson?" The room seemed to grow very still. Maya could hear the ticking of the antique clock on the bookshelf, the distant sounds of traffic from the street below. For 3 years she had kept her past locked away, sharing it with no one in her new life. Now sitting in this quiet office, she felt the carefully constructed walls of her new identity beginning to crumble. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but the denial sounded hollow even to her own ears. The judge opened another drawer and pulled out a folder. "I thought you looked familiar the first day you started working here, but I couldn't place it. This morning, watching you handle Officer Walters, something clicked." She opened the folder and turned it so Maya could see the contents. Inside was a printout of a redacted military document, most of it blacked out, but at the bottom was a photograph of a younger Maya in uniform, receiving a commendation from a general whose face had been obscured for security reasons. "This was from a classified briefing I attended in 2015, Judge Martinez explained. "Most of the details were above my clearance level, even as a JAG colonel. But I never forget a face, Captain Johnson." Maya stared at the photograph. She remembered that day. The ceremony had been held in a secure location after her team had successfully extracted a high-value intelligence asset from a hostile region. The mission was never made public. "Where did you get this?" she asked quietly. "I still have friends at the Pentagon," the judge said. "After what I saw this morning, I made a call to an old colleague. He couldn't tell me much. Your record is heavily classified, but he confirmed you served with distinction in special operations for over 2 decades before retiring 3 years ago. Delta Force, if I'm not mistaken." Maya said nothing, her mind racing through options. Denial was pointless now. Judge Martinez closed the folder. "Your secret is safe with me, Captain. I respect your right to privacy and your desire to move on with your life after your service. I'm simply impressed." The tension in Maya's shoulders eased slightly. "Thank you, Your Honor. I'd prefer if this information stayed between us." "Of course," the judge assured her. "But I must ask, why this?" She gestured around her, indicating the courthouse. "With your background and skills, you could have done anything. Private security, government contracting, training. Why become a janitor?" Maya considered the question. It was one she had asked herself many times during her first months of civilian life. After 25 years of making life-or-death decisions, of carrying weapons instead of cleaning supplies, of living in shadows and moving in silence. "I wanted simplicity," she explained. "I wanted a job where nobody's life depended on my actions, where I could just be." The judge nodded slowly. "I think I understand. After seeing the worst of humanity, you wanted to just exist in the everyday world." "Exactly," Maya said, feeling a strange relief at finally being able to speak honestly with someone about her past. "And I like bringing order to chaos, even if it's just making sure the courthouse is clean and functional. It's purposeful work without the weight of national security on my shoulders." Judge Martinez smiled. "Well, your secret is safe with me. But I have to say, watching you handle Officer Walters this morning, it was quite something." He never knew what hit him. For the first time since entering the judge's chambers, Maya allowed herself a small smile. He made a classic mistake, underestimating his opponent based on appearance. "A mistake I imagine many made to their regret during your military career," the judge observed. Maya nodded, memories flashing through her mind. Missions in countries whose names never appeared in news reports. Operations that changed history without making the history books. Looking harmless has its advantages in my line of work. "Former line of work," Judge Martinez corrected gently. "Yes," Maya said, though something inside her had awakened during the confrontation with Walters. A part of herself she had tried to bury beneath mop buckets and cleaning schedules. "Former line of work." The judge made a few more notes on the incident form, then set it aside. "Well, Captain Johnson, thank you for your statement. And though it's belated and inadequate, thank you for your service to our country. Just Maya now, Your Honor, and thank you for your discretion." As Maya stood to leave, the judge said, "One more thing. The courthouse security team will be short-staffed with Walters suspended. They've been looking for someone with law enforcement or military background to fill in temporarily. If you're interested, I could put in a word." Maya hesitated at the door. The offer was tempting, a chance to use her training again, to step out of the shadows she had created for herself. But was she ready to let go of the peaceful anonymity she had built? "I'll think about it," she said finally. "For now, I should get back to my rounds." Judge Martinez nodded. "Of course, and Maya? What you did today standing up to Walters, it mattered. Not just for yourself, but for everyone in this building who's had to deal with his behavior. Some battles are worth fighting, even in civilian life. Maya felt something shift inside her, a realization that perhaps her two worlds didn't have to remain completely separate. Perhaps there was a middle ground where Captain Maya Johnson, Delta Force veteran, and Maya Johnson, courthouse janitor, could coexist. "Thank you, Your Honor," she said, and left the chambers. In the hallway, the courthouse was buzzing with activity. Lawyers and clerks hurrying past, absorbed in their own concerns. No one paid any attention to the janitor pushing her cleaning cart toward the supply closet. She was invisible again, just as she preferred. But as Maya reached the closet, she noticed a small group of courthouse employees watching her from a distance, whispering among themselves. Word of her confrontation with Walters had spread throughout the building, growing with each retelling until she had practically become a legend by the end of the day. Hector approached as she was organizing her supplies, a look of concern on his friendly face. "Hey, are you sure you're okay? Everyone's talking about what happened." "I'm fine," Maya assured him, "though I could do without all the attention." He lowered his voice. "They're saying Walters has been suspended pending an investigation. Apparently there have been other complaints about him in the past, but nobody would stand up to him before." Maya nodded, unsurprised. Bullies like Walters rarely targeted just one person. "Also," Hector continued, glancing around to make sure no one was listening, "some of the security guys were wondering how you took him down so easily. They're saying you moved like some kind of ninja." "People are exaggerating," Maya said with a small laugh. "All I did was trip him with my mop. Pure luck." Hector didn't look entirely convinced, but he nodded. "Well, whatever happened, you're the courthouse hero today. Rita from Records is talking about buying you lunch tomorrow to thank you for standing up to him." Maya groaned inwardly. This was exactly the kind of attention she had spent 3 years avoiding. "That's really not necessary," she said. "I just want things to go back to normal." But as she finished her shift and headed toward the employee exit, Maya wondered if normal was even possible anymore. Her confrontation with Walters had cracked the facade of her carefully constructed civilian identity. Judge Martinez knew the truth now. Others might start asking questions, noticing things they hadn't before. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the courthouse steps. Maya paused, looking back at the imposing building where she had spent the last 3 years blending into the background. For the first time since retiring from the military, she felt truly seen. As she walked toward the bus stop, Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number. "Captain Johnson, this is Colonel Henderson from Fort Bragg. Judge Martinez suggested I reach out. We're putting together a training program for courthouse security personnel, and could use someone with your expertise as a consultant. Minimal commitment, good pay. Call me if interested." Maya stared at the message for a long moment, then slipped the phone back into her pocket without replying. She wasn't ready to make that decision yet. But for the first time in 3 years, she was considering the possibility of stepping out of the shadows, of finding a balance between her past and her present. As she boarded the bus, Maya Johnson, janitor, veteran, survivor, allowed herself a small smile. Whatever came next, she would face it with the same quiet strength and dignity that had carried her through battlefields and broom closets alike. 2 weeks had passed since the incident with Officer Walters, and Maya's life had changed in ways both subtle and profound. She still arrived at the courthouse at 5:30 each morning, still moved through the hallways with her cleaning cart, still kept the building spotless and functional. But something fundamental had shifted. People noticed her now. Lawyers nodded as they passed, clerks smiled and stopped to chat, security officers regarded her with a newfound respect. The invisibility she had cultivated for 3 years had vanished like morning mist under the sun. "Morning, Maya," called Rita from Records as Maya mopped the main entrance hall. "Are you coming to the staff potluck on Friday?" "I'm making my famous potato salad." Maya paused, leaning on her mop. Before the incident, she would have politely declined, preferring to maintain the boundaries between her work and personal life. But now, looking at Rita's hopeful face, she found herself nodding. "I'd like that," she said. "Should I bring something?" Rita beamed. "Whatever you like. It's just a casual thing in the break room." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Did you hear about Walters?" The disciplinary board finished their investigation. He's been fired, and they're reviewing all his previous complaints. Maya wasn't surprised. In the days following the incident, several other courthouse employees had come forward with stories about Walters' behavior. creating a pattern that couldn't be ignored. "Good," she said simply. He shouldn't have been in a position of authority. As Rita continued down the hall, Maya returned to her mopping, her movements efficient and precise. The rhythm of the work was soothing, allowing her mind to wander. She still hadn't responded to Colonel Henderson's text message about the security training position. The idea both tempted and terrified her. For 3 years, she had worked to leave her military identity behind, to become just Maya the janitor. Taking on a role that acknowledged her past, even in a limited capacity, felt like opening a door she had deliberately closed. At noon, Maya took her lunch break in the small courtyard behind the courthouse. The autumn air was crisp, leaves from the maple trees drifting down to coat the concrete benches in red and gold. She unwrapped her sandwich and opened her book, a biography of Eleanor Roosevelt she'd been working through all week. "Mind if I join you?" Maya looked up to see Judge Martinez standing beside the bench, a salad container in hand. The judge had been discreet since their conversation, treating Maya with the same professional courtesy as before, never hinting at what she knew about Maya's past. "Please," Maya said, moving her lunch bag to make room. The judge sat, arranging her black robes around her. "How are you doing with all the attention?" she asked, opening her salad. Maya considered the question. "It's different, not what I'm used to." "I imagine not. Your previous work required a certain anonymity." They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching a squirrel dart around the courtyard gathering acorns for winter storage. "Have you thought any more about Colonel Henderson's offer?" Judge Martinez finally asked. Maya set down her sandwich. "You know about that?" The judge smiled. "I'm the one who suggested he contact you. The courthouse security team needs better training, especially after what happened with Walters. Who better to provide it than someone with your experience?" "I haven't decided yet," Maya admitted. "For 3 years I've been working to build a different life, to leave all that behind." Judge Martinez studied her thoughtfully. "May I offer some perspective from someone who also transitioned from military to civilian life?" Maya nodded. "When I left the JAG Corps, I thought I needed to become an entirely different person to fit into civilian life. I downplayed my military background, avoided talking about my service. I thought that was what moving on meant." The judge speared a cherry tomato with her fork. "It took me years to realize that integrating my past with my present made me stronger, not weaker." Maya considered this. "I'm not ashamed of my service," she said slowly. "But after so many years of intensity, I needed the quiet, the simplicity. And you don't have to give that up," Judge Martinez assured her. "The position Henderson is offering is part-time, consulting only. You could keep your job here, maintain the life you've built while also using skills that frankly are too valuable to let rust." A leaf drifted down, landing on the bench between them. Maya picked it up, turning it over in her fingers, examining the intricate pattern of veins that had once carried life through it. "I've spent 3 years trying to become someone new," she said quietly. "But when Walters attacked me, I didn't have to think about how to respond. It was instinctive. Those skills, that training, they're still part of me, whether I acknowledge them or not." The judge nodded. "We never truly leave our past behind, Captain. We just find new ways to carry it." After lunch, Maya returned to her cleaning duties, the judge's words echoing in her mind. As she worked, she found herself paying more attention to the security procedures in the courthouse, noting vulnerabilities, observing patterns, seeing the building through the eyes of her former self. The courthouse had become more than just a workplace to her over the past 3 years. It was a community, a microcosm of the society she had spent her military career protecting from the shadows. Perhaps there was a way to serve that community that honored both her past and her present. At the end of her shift, Maya made her decision. In the quiet of the employee locker room, she took out her phone and dialed Colonel Henderson's number. "Colonel Henderson speaking." "This is Maya Johnson," she said, her voice steady and clear. "I'm calling about the training position." 20 minutes later, Maya stepped out of the courthouse into the golden light of late afternoon. She felt lighter somehow, as if a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had been lifted from her shoulders. The terms she and Henderson had agreed upon were reasonable. 2 evenings a week plus occasional Saturdays. Teaching courthouse security personnel improved techniques for de-escalation, threat assessment, and non-lethal restraint. She would keep her day job as a janitor, maintaining the balance and quiet she had found there. while also allowing herself to acknowledge and use the skills from her military career. As Maya waited at the bus stop, her phone buzzed with a text from her neighbor about their community garden meeting that weekend. This was her life now: bus rides and community gardens, cleaning schedules, and staff potlucks. But it could also include training security officers and sharing the wisdom she had gained through years of service. Perhaps she didn't have to choose between Captain Johnson and Maya the janitor. Perhaps both could coexist. The next morning, Maya arrived at the courthouse at her usual early hour. The building was quiet, the hallways empty except for the night security guard finishing his shift. "Morning, Maya," he said with a yawn. "Heard you're going to be teaching some classes for the security team soon." News traveled fast in the courthouse. Maya nodded. "Just some basic techniques." "Nothing fancy," the guard chuckled. "After what you did to Walters with just a mop, I'd say we could all learn a thing or two from you." As she began her morning cleaning routine, Maya moved through the building with a new awareness. These halls and rooms that she had cleaned for 3 years were still the same. But she was seeing them differently now, not just as spaces to maintain, but as a community to protect. In courtroom 3, she found Judge Martinez already at her desk, reviewing files for the day's cases. "You're here early." "Your Honor," Maya said as she began dusting the jury box. The judge looked up with a smile. "Big case today. Thought I'd get a head start." She studied Maya for a moment. "You look different this morning." Maya paused. "Different how?" "More present," the judge said thoughtfully. "Less like you're trying to disappear." Maya considered this as she continued her work. It was true, for 3 years she had been trying to make herself invisible, to fade into the background of her new life. But invisibility was a tool, not an identity. Sometimes being seen was its own kind of strength. By 9 o'clock, the courthouse was coming to life around her. Lawyers hurried through the halls with briefcases and coffee cups. Witnesses and defendants sat nervously on benches. Clerks rushed to organize the day's paperwork. Maya moved among them with her cleaning cart, keeping the building functioning just as she had done for the past 3 years. But now people greeted her by name. A young public defender asked her advice about a stuck drawer in his desk. The new security officer who had replaced Walters nodded to her with respect as she passed through the checkpoint. During her lunch break, Maya sat in the courtyard again, enjoying the autumn sunshine. Her phone buzzed with an email from Colonel Henderson, sending the training schedule for her first session the following week. As she reviewed it, making mental notes about what she would cover, she heard footsteps approaching. "Ms. Johnson?" It was the young clerk who had thanked her after the incident with Walters. "Some of us are going for coffee after work on Friday. We wondered if you might like to join us." 3 weeks ago, Maya would have politely declined, protecting the boundaries of her private life. But today, looking at the hopeful face of this young woman who had found the courage to stand up to a bully because of Maya's example, she smiled. "I'd like that," she said. "Thank you for asking." As the clerk walked away, Maya turned her face up to the sun, feeling its warmth on her skin. For 25 years, she had served her country from the shadows, carrying out missions that would never be acknowledged publicly. For 3 years after that, she had hidden herself away in a different kind of shadow, trying to become someone new. Now at 52, Maya Johnson was stepping into the light, not fully as the decorated Delta Force captain she had been, nor solely as the quiet janitor she had become, but as someone who contained both of those identities and more. That afternoon, as she polished the brass railings in the main hall, Maya caught a glimpse of her reflection in the gleaming metal. The face looking back at her was lined with experience, marked by years of service both seen and unseen. But her eyes were clear and steady, meeting her own gaze without hesitation. "At ease, Captain," she whispered to herself, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Then she picked up her polishing cloth and returned to work, bringing order to her corner of the world, one careful, deliberate motion at a time. In courtroom 3, Judge Martinez was addressing the gallery, her voice carrying through the open door. "Justice works best when we see each person's true value," she was saying. "When we look beyond appearances to recognize the strength, dignity, and worth that each individual brings to our community." Maya paused, letting the judge's words wash over her. Then she straightened her shoulders, not with the rigid posture of a military officer, but with the quiet dignity of a woman who had found her place in the world, a woman who had learned that sometimes the most courageous act was simply allowing yourself to be seen.